and unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our last talk for this sesshin on the sixth day of Rohatsu. And we're honored to have from Pennsylvania, from Oan Zendo, Mado. So welcome, Mado. It's been a while since you've been here, but it feels like home looking into your space there from here, nearly 3,000 miles away. I wish I had something I could just give you. But we'll work on that. We're working on quantum Zoom. So next time. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Doug. Typically, I would be sitting right there in the Zendo. It's been probably over 20 years of making this pilgrimage from Pennsylvania to Jikoji, also to see my daughter in Alameda, who I miss, and also all my spiritual family at Jikoji. And so I want to thank you for giving me the honor of offering this last talk, and to thank you and all the residents of Jikoji for making this possible. And it's not just a general thank you, it's very precise. This takes work, I know, because I'm here at Oan, a Dharma center that also needs upkeep and needs tender loving care and needs all the cushions to be vacuumed and the meals to be made and the rocks to be moved and the tea bowls to be washed and moving things around, putting the schedule together, problem solving. This is all work that goes on to make it possible for us to come together in this open sharing space. So a very precise thank you for all the small and big things that you all do to welcome us. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see familiar faces and a number of unfamiliar faces. Usually when I'm on Zoom these days, my Sangha is up there and I know everyone, and it's kind of easy, but it's very nice to make new friends and to hear from those of you who practice in California. When I was reciting this sutra with you, and also reading along with it, I found myself swaying back and forth, especially when I was listening with my eyes closed sometimes and just listening to the reading. I found myself swaying. And I found this sutra very evocative. It evoked many memories for me. And one of these memories, this muscle memory of swaying back and forth, renewed an experience I had as a young child who would yearly visit my grandparents who lived in the Lower East Side of New York in a tenement. They were newly coming from Russia. And in the basement of the tenement was what we called a shul. It was really a synagogue. It was a little temple in the basement of this tenement. It was a tiny room. And I remember sneaking out down from my grandmother's little apartment. And this was during Passover. And she would have a carp, a fish, in her bathtub, ready to be actually slaughtered and made into what we called gefilte fish, which was part of our Passover meal. But I would sneak down to this mystical place in the basement of this tenement where all the men were praying. And I would, of course, women weren't allowed in there. And so I would just kind of stay on the staircase and watch them swaying back and forth with their yarmulkes and their prayer shawls. It was dark and there were just candles and the Torah was illuminated, but not very much else was illuminated except those beautiful white prayer shawls and their white caps and the sound of this mystical Hebrew language. And it was called davening. And I always thought that davening was this act of swaying back and forth. But I actually looked it up before I gave this talk. And davening means praying. This back and forth is called shuckling, which is kind of an interesting, funny word. And so as I was listening to this sutra and also reciting it, I had this incredibly strong impulse to shuckle, to sway back and forth. It felt like praying to me. It felt like I was finally admitted to the shul, that I could enter this mystical place that my grandfather was able to enter, but I wasn't. But I did have my grandfather with me while we were reciting the sutra. And I was recalling one of the questions that was asked. And one of the questions was, why do we have to study sutras if our practice is beyond words and scripture? It's kind of the same question in a different way that Dogen asked when he asked, why do we have to practice since we're already enlightened? But it was important for me to have my grandfather with me during this sesshin. And the answer that was coming up for me in why we recite these sutras and why we study these sutras is so that we can have our ancestors with us. If not them, not us. Because of them, us. And so it's really important to welcome them back in every time we sit, every time we have sesshin, to invite them back to sit with us. And we can do that in part by studying the sutras, by listening to their names, by repeating their words. And in repeating their words, the words become scripture. And only then can we go beyond scripture. I think when we say our practice is beyond words at scripture, I'm not sure that it means that it's without words in scripture, but that it goes through words in scripture to another place. And when that happens, words become sacred. They become prayer. Just as, this flower garland sutra, some of you may be aware of Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, which he introduces with a kind of homage to flowers, because flowers appeared in the course of evolution as a kind of, it's one of those appearances that didn't have any real practical value. Flowers, there's sort of the sacred expression of vegetation. And so the Flower Garland Sutra is a kind of sacralization, making sacred of words. They're sacred words. And they're evocative. They're not designed to be intellectually understood, but to be as a prayer. And sometimes it feels like when we recite these words, we're speaking in tongues. There came a point in the recitation of the sutra when I kind of lost all sense of the conventional meaning of words. And the words, it felt like I was just speaking in tongues. The words went beyond anything that was intellectually discernible. I learned a while ago that in the Zulu community, the Bushmen in South Africa, they have a way of greeting one another, which is quite extraordinary. When one appears to another, he or she says, "Saukona," which means we are here. And the other person says, "Sawubona," which means we see you. This is the greeting. It's not, "Hi, how are you?" or shaking of hands. It's, I'm here. I'm here to be seen. And the other person says, we see you. It's a way of bringing into presence human beings, realizing their presence together. And notice that they don't use the word I. It's, we are here. And we see you. So they have a very deep sense of ancestral community. And so when they think of themselves as coming with their entire ancestry, so we are here. We're all here, the whole Sangha, the whole history of our people. I am here only because of all of them. And the other person doesn't say, I see you. It's, we see you. I come also with this entire community. So this is the sense, the feeling that I have when we come together in sesshin or in our practice. We don't come alone. I come with my grandfather, who I haven't really made a connection with for a very long time. And realized how he's with me as I pray. And as I was not able to be with him so many years ago. This capacity to be in community this way brings me joy. To be with him, to be with you, to be with my Sangha, to be with all beings is a glimpse of joy. And to me, that's in a way what this sutra is all about. It's about sukha, much more than about dukkha. And the language of the sutra, the imagery of the sutra, the richness of the sutra, the light and the sounds, it's like that little shul in the basement, full of candlelight and human bodies swaying together, the scriptures lit up, embedded in the tenement, embedded in the home where my grandparents lived. It was their life. What joy to be able to pray in this way at home. So we get a glimpse of what it might feel like and look like to be liberated, to experience that joyfulness. It's almost like, when you have a fever for a while, or you're sick, and then the fever breaks. I know I have this experience. And then there's a kind of euphoria that sets in. It's like, wow, I just feel so incredibly energized, and I feel like I can go and conquer the world. I've healed. That moment when you know you're better. It's like that with our practice often. It's like, I have a glimpse of this incredible liberation from this fever, these delusions, these illusions, this suffering. My fever has broken for a moment, and this beautiful light has shone through. And I know that it's possible, because our practice is much more about sukha, liberation, than it is about suffering. It's the way of liberation. And so one of the joys of the Bodhisattva is to introduce all beings to the joy of being free. And it's the joy of the Bodhisattva, as it's enumerated in this sutra, to discover all the myriad ways of helping beings get a glimpse of this. It takes deep attention to beings to get a sense of how to give them a glimpse of this in ways that they can access it. So that's the joyful work of the Bodhisattva, to pay attention. So this term, enlightening beings, it can be seen on the one hand as enlightening as an adjective. That is, this Bodhisattva, all of the voices that we heard, all the Bodhisattva voices in this sutra, are enlightening beings. They are in the process of being enlightened. They are enlightening. It's not a final state. It's not an enlightened being. It's not a finalized being. It's an enlightening being, a being who is in process. But it's also not just an adjective describing the Bodhisattva, but it's a verb. These are beings who are enlightening others. They are shining lights so others can get a glimpse of the joy of this practice. It's kind of like walking in the darkness and having a flashlight. And I have this image of walking up to the ridge at Jikoji at night. somebody, maybe Hogan, is holding a flashlight, or maybe it's Doug, and showing the way, just a few steps ahead of us. These enlightening beings are showing us the way, are lighting up the way for us. And I'm reminded of many times, and maybe this evokes some of the times that you've gotten glimpses of this sacred world. There was a time when I was in Sesshin, and it was a Rinzai temple. And we were actually eating a meal, our evening meal, at a table. And we all had bowls of miso soup. And the miso was dark miso. And above the table was a beautiful Japanese lantern. And I was picking my bowl of miso soup up to drink from it. And the miso was just as calm and even as possible. And there was the lantern in my soup. And I thought, it was so real. It's there. There's a lantern in my soup. And of course, this brings, it was reminding me of how the moon shines in the pond without disturbing the water. And times when I remember a time when I was standing outside of the Zendo here at Oan, and there was a steady rain coming off the roof. I was standing on the deck, and I was watching the rain come off the roof. And just the way the light was, it was like an endless flow of Christmas tinsel, just flowing off the roof. And I was, as Mary Oliver said, what she wanted on her tombstone, she said, I wanted to read, she was a bride married to amazement. She was a bride married to amazement. Just joyful at that sight. The first time at Jikoji, my wonderful tea teacher, Juro, made us tea very early in the morning, and walking into the Zendo and seeing the smoke on a very cold morning, the smoke from the kama rising into the air. And thus, those of us walking in to be offered this simple bowl of tea. And it was magical. It was deeply moving. These are all glimpses of how our practice shines a light on our world and sacralizes everything, makes everything sacred. It's like, the Raksu or the Buddha's Okesa. made out of all discarded materials. Menstrual cloth, cloth that is comes from funeral pyres, discarded garbage, all of it sewn together to make a sacred garment. It's sacralizing the world. As flowers are sacred expressions of vegetation, as our scriptures are sacralized words. They help us glimpse the joy of our practice. So I was considering two other teachers that I've had, very kind of distant teachers. One was Darwin, who had a glimpse of the sacred character of the world. And I'd like to just read you something that quite astounded me. In the last paragraphs, the last chapter of Origin of the Species. It is no accident that we find ourselves perched on one tiny twig in the midst of a blossoming and flowering tree of life. No accident that we are surrounded by millions of other species, eating, growing, rotting, swimming, walking, flying, burrowing, stalking, chasing, fleeing, outpacing, outwitting. I want to daven while I'm reading this. This is Darwin. We are surrounded by endless forms, more beautiful and most wonderful. And it is no accident, but the direct consequence of evolution, the greatest show on earth. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or one. And while this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. Darwin was sitting by a swamp when he wrote these words, watching, having a glimpse of the beauty of the world, of the sacredness of the world, and helping us. He's a bodhisattva, helping us see that light. He is enlightening beings. He's helping us see and glimpse the joy. And the other teacher that I want to mention is Plato. And Plato, in his dialogue, this symposium, is his dialogue on love. And Socrates, who is always the main person in the dialogues, insists that the speakers at the dialogue, each one of them has a turn in speaking about love, that they don't begin their speeches until everyone gets drunk. It's almost like we don't really begin to practice until the sesshin is over. It's only when we're really completely exhausted and the shine of our ego has completely been destroyed that practice can begin. So Socrates says, we all have to be drunk in order to talk about love. Why? Because you can't talk about love when you're too sober and too rational. So you sort of have to get out of your mind to talk about love. And one of the ways of doing that, if you're drunk, you may be able to speak from the heart. You may be able to say something noble, something that wouldn't come from the discursive mind. And so there is, for me, a sense of being totally intoxicated by this sutra. It's intoxicating. I'm drunk with the Dharma. I don't know whether Jiro is here, but I remember early on in our discussions, Jiro already said that he was stuffed, that we had read enough so that he had already had it up to here. And my sense was that I think Jiro was suggesting that beyond that, we would get drunk. But we had to go beyond that. We had to go beyond being stuffed. Just getting intoxicated. And like my grandfather, just praying. Just the joy of prayer. So maybe I'd like to kind of, an image is coming up now for me, and maybe this will be a good image to end with, and then invite you into the conversation. The image that's coming to me is the image of, on these posters of the earth, and then there's an arrow saying, "You are here," right? To give us a sense of how tiny we are, right? You are here. But this sutra and our practice is the other end of the arrow. You are here. This is what our scriptures and our recitations and our practice bring us to. This place on the earth is not the only place we are. Where is the arrow coming from? I remember Pamela's question about who. But this is who too. Where's the arrow coming from? Right? It's all of it. And we can enter we can help each other enter this realm of sukha, of joy together. And so deep gratitude. I never would have confession. I never would have gone so deeply into this sutra on my own. And thus, without you, I would never have entered that shul with my grandfather, women not allowed. So thank you all. So now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mido, for the talk. It was really beautiful. And particularly, I like when you talked about sesshin and that sitting in a sesshin destroys the shine of the ego. Can you talk more about that? I would like to learn more on that. Thank you.
I'd kind of be happy to, but I have talked enough and I'm happy to go back to that. But I think every one of us has probably experienced that. And maybe it would be fun, helpful to hear what you, others have experienced as the disappearing of the shine of the ego.
I mean, for me, it is like sitting with pain, mostly like this session, right? Or even once before. It's like being able to sit with pain. That's the experience. I'll let others talk.
So we come to Sesshin the first day. You know, we come from our various lives and we are shaved and our hair looks decent and, you know, we're presentable. And as the days go by, the bags begin to show under our eyes and our hair is messed up and we don't walk with as great a spring to our step. And maybe our shoulders are hunched over and we smell a little bit because we haven't showered. Or, you know, I mean, we're tired. We're tired. And it's almost like Plato or Socrates insisting that everyone get drunk, or sometimes at the end of a party, when everybody is exhausted, and everybody's danced their heart out, then things get interesting, because you kind of, you're so tired, you're not too much in control, which the ego likes to be. The ego likes to be in control.
By
And
the
like,
way, Mado, when is your next party and where is it going to be?
come on down. I think Doug peered in one time when we were having this great party in the Zendo, right, Doug? I think it was Chris Colin and I forget who else. Someone from South America. We were dancing for hours on end. So it can happen at Jikoji. I recommend it, Taizan. Yeah, so what I'm suggesting is that here we are at the end of Sesshin, and I bet everybody's feeling not as much put together, being presentable in the typical way that we present ourselves in the world. But we're kind of worn out. We've worn out all of our narratives and all of our presentations of ourselves. Hopefully, I mean, that would be wonderful if that were the case. It seems to me that's what happens to me. And when I look around at others who have practiced for 7 days, particularly during Rohatsu, everybody looks kind of reduced to just being human, just being a living, breathing being without many pretensions. I hope that.
Thank you.
Yes.
In one of the earlier days of Sesshin, oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn, do you want to speak?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead. You were speaking first, so please.
I found myself during Zazen sort of rehearsing things I wanted to say on Zoom, later. Or rehearsing things I could have said in the previous session that would have been a lot smarter than what I did say. And I thought of this book title from, I think, a psychology class I took in college, 50 years ago or more. The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. Do you know that one? I think the guy's name is Goffman, because I looked it up. And it's like the theory is that we all are like actors. It's like life as theater, and you present yourself on a stage, and you show how you want to. You have an idea of how you want to present yourself, but then there's a backstage personality where you can more or less be yourself. And I'm not sure if that's all, but anyway, I don't know what my point is. It just, I guess I'd aspire to not be an actor and just be the backstage guy, that I suppose maybe, or self. I guess we don't necessarily believe in self, do we? So anyway, that's what I thought of when Mahesh, asked that question about ego. So, thank you.
Well, I wanted to say something about when Mahesh brought in a very specific circumstance that he connected somehow with the ego, or I felt, about pain and being with pain. And I'm reminded what has helped me a lot, and I have sat with a lot of pain in different times. And I'm referring to what Chuck brought in. We both each mentioned the Satipatthana Sutta, which, and also this arising and seeing when you pay really careful attention to the actual physical sensation of pain, seeing its changes and its impermanence. So I have found that very useful and just that, so you are paying attention, but in the way of mindfulness and awareness. And that act of paying attention, truly it's your own pain, but there's a way in which the not self arises and the ego disappears. And it does take, it takes sticking with it. I remember practicing in early days in Vipassana and insight groups, and someone who had been around longer than I had at that time, he said, "There's nothing like knee pain to bring you right to the present." And looking into that impermanence. So
On Monday, Mike spoke about how, I think he said this on Monday, and Mike, I hope you're there and listening at Michael's iPad, that pain is not ours. I mean, when you feel this pain, it sure feels like it's mine, but it isn't. How can you? And so, Michael, are you there? Can you speak to that point? I think that's an important one. I guess maybe he's not there. So, can pain accumulate? Can you take it with you? Can we take all our pain with us when we die? It evaporates. It dissipates. And so maybe it's that the conundrum of like, I got to get out of this situation because it hurts. And by recognizing that it is only one of the myriad sensations that we experience, then even in the midst of the pain, if it's not ours, then other things that are not ours that we hear, like the birds and the laughing squirrels here in this valley, or the cars roaring by, are just also of equal. And when we hold on to the pain as if it's ours, I feel a lot of pain. I'm really hurting bad. This is really the most miserable thing, or whatever. It's just all about me. And if we can see that it is just itself pain, like everything else, then we can sit with it, which is going to be helpful when we die. Last week, Hogan and I sat with our dear friend Robert, who at 90 passed away and was in some pain, but he did not take any medications. He just stayed with it, and he had loving people around him. He was one of the really, really, really fortunate ones to have loving people around. There's so many people who die alone. but he just was with it. Whatever pain there is in that process. And so as we rest in this body of sensation, we don't give it a high, any sensation, any special value, except those that we really like. Anyway.
So I feel like it's my duty tonight to continue to introduce joy. This is incredibly interesting to see how the tendency that we have is always to gravitate towards suffering, which is, of course, a deep element in our practice. But in this particular case, and again, responding to Mahesh and what all of you have been saying, when you sit long enough, and particularly during sesshin, when that sitting is relentless, you have a fighting chance of experiencing the space between your pain and something we call ourself. You have a fighting chance of experiencing what you're talking about, Doug, or Michael mentioned, that this isn't my pain. You got to sit long enough to, it's almost a muscular thing that you get this space between you and all this stuff that is attaching to you. And that space, when you can dwell in that space, that is joy. That is liberation. That's just my take on it. So I don't want us to get stuck totally in suffering tonight. It's just, I've been invited, so I'm going to insist upon bringing us back to the joy in our practice that can be accessed through pain, but we got to practice.
I wanted to say thank you for reminding us about the joy, and that I don't find it very separable from the suffering. I think they go together. I've noticed in this time of separation from Jikoji and from loved ones and friends and family, that I've found the suffering has really illuminated the affection and illuminated what's important. And that's very joyful. I also wanted to thank you for bringing in your ancestors. Those are my ancestors too, Mado. My grandfather, both sides, grandparents were from Russia. I know those movements. I know those rooms and those lights and those songs. And so I enjoyed visiting with them while you were speaking. And I really appreciate your paying attention to, I usually shy away from this word, but it feels the right word right now, which is the holiness of this gathering, just this right now, this gathering. It feels, I guess you would say sacred, I would say holy tonight. It feels very holy. And I think I appreciate your pointing how paying attention reminds us how holy everything is, that it's just a big beam of awareness about how lucky we are in every moment, no matter how unfortunate we are, how holy it is just to be here and tonight to be together. So thanks for reminding us.
I would also like to speak to the joy of this gathering and transition us into closing. Even though we have about 8 periods of zazen left in the sesshin till tomorrow's Sunday program, where Taizan Mark is on the hot seat for the Shuso ceremony. I want to express joy and gratitude to all of you who have participated here. And here on the home front, I'd like to express gratitude to Jen Holman. I hope you're there, Jen. I see your name is on the screen, for taking care of us in so many ways. She's been our Tenzo in this difficult time and has also been instrumental in helping develop how we execute this sesshin. She's worked diligently with the Jikoji Management Group to look at the rules of the local counties to see what is appropriate. And it's just been a huge, huge help, Jen, to set the foundation and nurture us through this week. So thank you so much. I want to also thank the different folks who have done the Han and the Doan here, John and Emmy and Jero and Mike and Jen has been involved, and also Jero for serving tea to us in the tea hut. We've had a very safe ceremonial tea with him in the tea hut. Each of us here. And so thank you, Jero, for that, and also for doing the Han and the Doan outside. I want to thank Taizan and Jero for being willing to be here and sit outside, and thank Michael and Jen and Emmy and Rain for joining in this outside sitting on our deck, where I think that's something that will happen in the future. We hadn't really done it before. We'd done outdoor nature sessions, but sitting on the deck has been delightful. And so thank you all for the solidarity of outdoor sitting. It's been real lonely here in the Zendo. It's only 1, 2, or 3 of us here in the Zendo, and there are 2, 3, 4, or 5 outside on the deck. So that's plus all of you. And I want to thank Chuck from Chicago and Tom from Milwaukee and Mahesh, I think from Mountain View. Aren't you from down the hill from us? And Mado from Pennsylvania, and Paula from San Diego, and Pamela from Los Olivos near Santa Barbara, John from Tucson. Thank you for joining us for this sesshin. Michael Schnee, who's up in Medford, Oregon. And so everyone who's participated in these sits and these talks and the readings, very much appreciate it. Nico. And Nico, I know you don't like thanks very often, but thank you for all the work you do for making sure we're Johnny on the spot, that the website is taken care of, that the newsletter is taken care of, that people are promptly responded to when they reach out to Jikoji, and it's been just a huge assist to make this seamless. And you can see she's right here in the Zendo with us. So thank you, Nico. Pardon me? Yeah. So I want to thank all the speakers, Mike on Monday, who worked through the 4 holy truths, and he didn't like the word holy. With Paula on Tuesday, that was wonderful time to have you join us here in the Zendo again, chanting. Your energy was right here. Thank you, Paula. And we look forward to you occupying this space that you do so well.
Thank you, Doug, for all the changes and how well you read. Thank you for that, really, and this whole thing. In fact, since the other people aren't here necessarily because they're working or outside, I just hope you thank them with all my heart for everything they've done, because I know how much work that is.
Thank you. And then on Wednesday, we had Trout Black, who isn't here right now, but it was really nice to have him back, a really old Coben student. On Thursday, Chuck, a really fine talk. It was wonderful time. Friday with Carolyn, working again with was it perfecting practice? I think that was chapter 11. And then Mado today. And so what I'd like to do now is just open it up to each person to do as Mado suggests and talk about the joy. Maybe things that you want to say about how Sesshin was for you and how it is, how you feel. So thank you.
Well, firstly, I would like to thank Mado for bringing in the joy so strongly and so clearly. And this is the way the sessions always end, I think. At least perhaps I've been fortunate, but I know many who go through the pain and come to the other place. And also the 4 ennobling truths. That's the 3rd truth, the end of suffering. That's the joy. That's where we are. So, and these being together, when we come together, we really, really remember that and take it into our bodies, even through this medium, I feel. So, to everyone, again, and especially Doug and the Jikoji residents, all without enumerating them again, but I know how much they put together. And also, I really, really appreciate their creativity in coming up with a new form, with an appropriate form for the moment and the time. Their courage in embodying, showing us that form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. There's always space for something else.
Well, I'm feeling pretty empty, and but I have a full heart. I don't have a lot of words. It's been a really wonderful experience, and I'm really grateful. And I'm sorry that I'm going to leave it at that. But with mind and heart, I'm very thankful.
I approached this session not having any experience with the sutra, not ever even looked at it. And I felt that, Doug, I saw your thoughtfulness and your energy all over the way it was arranged. I felt like every day I got to open up a present wrapped in furoshiki. It was just beautiful. And then these incredible presenters would just, help me open up all the presents inside. For me, it was a remarkable thing. And I know, Doug, if I say thank you to you, you're going to say, oh, there are a million other people involved. And there were. But I see your thoughtfulness about all over it. And so I want to embarrass you and say thank you, especially to you and to all the Jikoji peeps. I know, having been at Sesshin there, I know how much you all put together. And Jen, thank you for taking care of them. And Nico, thank you for putting everything together that you do, and everybody. I won't name you all again. I also want to say that I hope it's not presumptuous to say this, that I actually feel that I met my aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters in this sesshin. Something about this lineage, I feel so familial with all of you. And it was really a pleasure to see that, my experience with Mike and Doug and Jikoji and really Kobun's lineage, it's way bigger than my experience just there, and it's all over the place with you. And I feel very grateful to have and very lucky to have been in the room with you. So thank you all. All of you are my teachers.
I feel kind of new to I am new to the Kobun lineage. I've known Mike for a number of years because he used to come and visit us in the Chicago area. And there is a sadness, always a sadness at not having actually known Kobun. But there is this, from the way, when I first heard, I was at the Denkaway in 2016, and he was, he was talked about a lot there. And it's been amazing for me, my sense of the embodiment that's carried on in this lineage. There's a spirit to it that I can feel. So it's like, I guess it's like being with him, because he's, the way you folks in this lineage are carrying it. I have deep gratitude for, Jikoji and the folks there. It's a real thing I feel really strongly in the heart. It's, sitting this week and sort of looking to my, I've been sitting one way and looking to the right and looking into the Zendo. And then when the computer was taken out on the deck, all the sounds coming in, it was really wonderful. It was like I was, the turkeys and the other birds, and hearing them. I could almost smell the place. So I'll say in general, and I don't want for this to be any lesser than all you folks at Jikoji. I really appreciate you. I always marvel when I'm around Doug, and I felt that I was around him this week. Even though we're a couple thousand miles apart, I could feel your energy, and it's inspiring. I hope you can take that in. It really is. It makes me smile. And last year's Denkaway, we were talking about the Jewel of Mir Samadhi, and I can't remember her name. She was actually ordained that week. She did a wonderful talk, looking at how the poem itself kept folding in and reflecting back. It was very nicely done. And that has stayed with me because it's the sense that the Dharma does that. The Dharma reflects life, actually, because that's the way what life does. This folding, I said several times, this gathering and folding in, but there's always this reflecting back. One thing reflecting, all this reflecting back and forth, of the various aspects of the Dharma, and that was very alive this week. I really appreciate it. At first, I thought, well, shouldn't we do the talks and then the discussion? But doing the discussion first really opened things up. It really, we got to be in it and simmer in it, if you will, for the rest of the day. That was really, that I really appreciate that. And then the reflecting, this, the Indra's net is not a static thing for me anymore. It's really alive. It's vibrant. It's pulsing, and it's energy and all this stuff, happening. And so you feel the things shining. You feel them, and that was very alive with you all. Even though we're sitting here looking at our screens, there's this wonderful spirit among you all that you can feel. And so bringing that in, and I think, Mado, that's joy. That's really a wonderful joy there. That even when we sort of go into the suffering, that's always there. That's always there. So thank you all very much.
Nico, were you going to speak? Were you going to speak? Okay. Well, I didn't sit most of the session. I just sat in the mornings and at night because I was working, and I was fortunate to, starting from Chuck's talk and then Chuck's talk and Carolyn's talk and today Mado's talk to hear this. There's a couple of things. I don't want to take too long because I tend to talk long. First, I want to apologize to, it's sincere to Nico and to Michael for my emotional outburst about the monks that commit suicide. So I realized afterwards, it's just part of my personality. So you guys are dear to me, and I didn't mean to offend you. The second thing is, when I think about joy in sessions, a lot of times it's about the funny things that happen that embarrass you or your friends. And then later on, years later, these are still my favorite memories. But I won't go through them because it's a long list. But during the course of this session, this is what I want to offer everybody. I hope I don't cry. This is from Bernie Glassman, Gate of Sweet Nectar. I think I mentioned it yesterday. I don't remember in what context, but then I sent it to, it was the exchange between Doug and Carolyn. That's why I emailed them. But anyway, it goes like this. Bernie Glassman Tetsugen rewarded Maizumi Roshi's Gift of Sweet Nectar in their lineage. And it's for Zen Peacemaker Order. calling out to hungry hearts everywhere through endless time. You who wonder, you who thirst, I offer you this body mind. Calling out to hungry spirits everywhere through endless time. Calling out to hungry hearts, all the lost and left behind. Gather around and share this meal, your joy and your sorrow. I will make it mine. I make them mine.
Thank you all for the opportunity to sit. I thank all the organizers of the retreat and all the teachers. I especially liked all the Dharma talks and all the questions also that came from the Sangha. That was very useful. For me, as I said, like even though we're talking about joy still, for me it was the session was like, okay, dealing with pain and sitting through the pain and learning how to do that. I'm sure that has its utility and will be useful. I also particularly found like the last sitting in the day on every day, almost like there's a lot of energy in that sitting. I'm not sure why. I've felt this even before at Jikoji. Yeah, I think that's all I have to share here. Thank you.
I had the idea, I think it was while I was sitting, or while Mato was talking, like, I don't want to let go of these people. And I was hoping, maybe there would be a way that we can gather again. Everyone that I know and everyone that I'm just meeting. Yeah. It's been, now I'll start to cry, so I'm not going to say too much more, but it's been necessary. It's been necessary for me to be with you all. And it's been wonderful. And, you know, it's a shame I often are wishing for the end of it. But now that it's ending, it's bittersweet. But thank you.
I guess I just want to say, I was telling Doug last night that I've been around Zen for well, some years, but this is my first 7-day sesshin, and I do feel like such a novice, and I'm so grateful for for all your understanding and experience, and all the speakers and Doug and just everybody. I feel so lucky to have done this, to have been with you, and I appreciate it, and I'd like to do this again. So thank you so much.
Good.
Maybe we should have a Sutra of the Month club.
Yeah, we'll do this again. It's successful. It's really fun to collaborate with so many, and it's quite rich. So we'll do it again somehow. Michael?
Hi. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's got your hands all over it, Doug. It's definitely, you're such a high energy guy. This just, was really good. I enjoyed it. I don't understand a lot of it. I don't understand a lot of things, but that's okay. And I've seen a lot of you around the speakers, but I think you've spoken to other Sashins I've been at Jikoji. I wish we could do it in person, And Kaveh, thank you for that wonderful poem. You always speak from the heart. That was wonderful. You always touch me. And everybody touches me in some way or another. It's good to see you, Kathy. Yeah, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I mean, I didn't get to sit as much as I want. I'm at home. It's not the same, but you do what you do. I'm going to start sitting outside. I think I like that when you're on the porch. I used to sit when I lived by the ocean. That was the best. I could sit for hours. Yeah, I learned a lot. I thank everyone for putting it on, all the people at Jikoji, where my heart lives. So hopefully I'll come back and see you all someday. I got vaccinated. I did the vaccine. So hopefully I didn't get the placebo, the Moderna one. So when I get the chance. All right. Love you all. Take care.
I just want to say how much admiration that I have for all these people who have, it's kind of one thing for people that are here and as speakers, and we have that kind of community, but all the people that came, like you, Michael, and Mahesh and John, who I may not have met, John Persh, and Kathy and Tom and now Rain and Emmy. I mean, Emmy's here. And so those of us that are here, like it is so much easier, Michael. And it's, that sense of community, which even here, it wasn't the same because we didn't have any kind of orioke, which, as you know, is such a major part of things. And, but the thing I wanted to say was, number one, that I admire all of this practice, that, all of you that came for this practice and showed up in this way from your homes. And the second thing I wanted to say is that this is a time of incredible anxiety and suffering in our local areas, wherever we are. And it is just phenomenal. People put on a good face and, try to maintain, as we say, but people are just feeling so despondent, at least around the ones that I know of. And so I hope that this session, has given us kind of a renewed energy to, courage is one of the things, that we talked about, to get courage and reinforcement to continue on, even when we're feeling these, I know for me, living in Aromas, I sometimes just feel this wave of just loneliness and sadness. And, you know, I'm a social person too. And it's like, oh my gosh, multiply that times the millions of people, but all the people in our own orbits. So anyway, I know that we all will. And that alone makes a lot of the pain worthwhile, to answer Mahesh's point about that. If that is the result of it, you know, if that kind of skillfulness comes about. Lastly, I just wanted to say, I don't know how Jikoji is surviving financially. And I hope that there is, I hope that those that can will consider as if you had come to the sesshin and do everything possible to support. This is a jewel. It's a really rare jewel. You know, there's not a lot of places like this. You know, somebody talked about that Goldilocks thing of not too formal, you know, you could say, for a temple, not too loose, but just beautiful, beautiful caretaking and making this a better world for all of us. So anyway, and of course, thank you all for supporting my own practice, as well as kind of we all do, all of us here. So thank you.
Taizan, I want to thank you also for your exemplary practice period that you led. And it just sounded like quite an amazing a practice period you had with some good speakers, and you gave good talks. So thank you for holding that seat and leading that whole thing on your own. I really appreciate it.
Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, since Carolyn and Paul are here, Angie's disciples, and someone mentioned, I think Chuck mentioned Covencino, and the feeling that he, you know, all of you, you know, you, Mike, all the teachers here, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. You know, I'm a vagabond. I've been around, you know, not, it's not so good maybe, but I've been around them. There's a very warm feeling and open feeling in Jikoji and my own teacher, Angie Bosibon. And her disciples. So I just wanted to put that out there. Angie's here in spirit, even if she's not here.
That's good. I do have a few words to say about joy. It's certainly been a great joy to see you and to be seen, as the Bushmen say. And we here at Jikoji see you, and that's great. We see you reflecting as one of those moving diamonds on Indra's net. We see the many reflections. That's come throughout this whole week. It's been a great joy to me to see so many wonderful teachers really enthusiastically participating in this week, and to see, to come to know each of you a bit better, and also to see you interacting with each other and sharing your views with each other. It's been quite helpful to me. It's a joy to work with Doug on such a rewarding effort as this. And it's a joy to see not only your reflections as your node in Indra's net, but also from the position that I'm in to see your mess on the floor. That's a part of it. If not that, then not you. Because that, then you. And it's all a joy, believe me. I wanted to share a little bit of the latest with Angie, with my teacher, Angie. I'm able to talk with her fairly frequently. And I don't know how many of you know, but a week ago Wednesday, she had another fall at her home, and she injured some of her ribs. And when I talked to her, we had to schedule a phone appointment, but she was just about to leave to go to the hospital. And then I was able to communicate with her this week, and she said that she had a short sojourn in the hospital, which she did not enjoy. But she was back home and feeling okay, but still had some more tests to undergo to try to determine what had really happened and then what follow-up care she would need. So she's at home now and coping, but she's always in my thoughts, and I know she's always in the thoughts of many of you. She is a jewel, truly, and a great joy. And just to finish on a little bit lighter note, Mado, we do have in the refrigerators here several bottles of bubbly champagne, which we'll probably open tomorrow afternoon. And I don't know that we'll get drunk, but we'll probably get a little tipsy and just blow off some steam from this week. So don't worry about us. Thank you all.
That's a comforting thought. While I'm unmuted, maybe I can share two short things. I'm looking at my teacher, who's now named Michael Newhall, but is really AKA Giro Reese. And he has taught me about what is often inscribed on the entrance to the tea hut. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jiro, it's Ichige, Ichigo, Ichi-e.
Right,
Ichigo, Ichi-e. For this one moment in time, this one meeting. This one moment in time, this one meeting. How precious that we have this moment. And the other thing that occurred to me was this a line from Milton, which is, I believe it goes, they also serve who only stand and wait. They also serve who only stand and wait. So my sense is when we talk so much about being active and being activists and doing things in the world, that I don't underestimate what we're doing here. We also serve who sit, who sit and practice. We have a very, very important role in our society. Don't underestimate it. And here we are doing the work of sitting and holding that space for everyone. Thank you.
This is very brief. If I could also bring in the other side. When I was ordained, my very good friend Glenna from way back, and Balin, especially Balin's very good friend, gave me a present, and I didn't want to open it, and right then I didn't get it until I got to the car. So we stopped our car at a park, I forget all these places, Felton, somewhere there, Boulder Creek, and I looked at the scroll, and it was just amazing to have it. I didn't know what it said, but she had put she'd written the words down as Coben told her, the words. And when I got home, I looked up the words, and it came from a story poem. But what it says on there is, every place is the practice place.
Yes, Jen.
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve and be in the kitchen. I think what Mado said today about, at the end of sesshin, how you're kind of exhausted, and it's a good kind of exhausted because, in a way we're giving everything that we can, even when we're just sitting or walking or breathing or chopping onions. And thank you, Doug, for having the flexibility where we could modify oryoki this time. I was thinking a couple days ago about how Coben had the courage to stop using the stick on people because he felt that it was, not fair or cruel. And I feel like changing this form to make it safe is kind of in the same thing. We're changing a really big part of Rohatsu, but at the same time, for the greater good. And just thank you for that opportunity.
I also want to, one of the projects that culminated in this practice period And with this sesshin is this scroll that Taizan, Mark, and Jiro and Emmy really spearheaded, with a golden timeline from Buddha to now. And I think we showed this a little earlier. We're gonna take a picture and it's gonna be on our website to point out that the following weekend, we actually have a calligraphy workshop. Jiro is gonna lead a Zoom calligraphy workshop from here. So thank you, Taizan. Thank you, Jiro. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, John, for this. And Michael too. I think there are lots of interesting things. So just very precious to have this from this whole practice period to now in this time. Thank you all. Well, maybe we have enough thank yous. Is there anyone else that would like to say a word or two?
I'd just like to let you know that my dog, who some of you may have seen sitting with me outside, is now a Pavlovian response to the bell, and he goes to his Avatam and lies down. So thank you so much for that.
Zen dog.
Zen dog.
My dog, when he was dying, he came to my zabuton. He didn't die on my zabuton, but he kind of like, this was his comfortable spot, and his spit and everything is on it. It's been 2 years, but I don't have the heart to clean it up. I'm also making adjustments. I'll never clean up that zabuton attachment.
Mark? Taizan?
Yes.
Your hands were in gasho. Did you want to say something?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was just overwhelmed.
Well, we can't go party yet. There's still more work to do. Much good work to do. So we'll go back to that and do the closing gatha. May our intentions equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.